News!
Okay, now it's time for another installment of what is fast becoming the most popular segment here on the channel. Not the Ring IQ hate mail, but the Ring IQ mailbag, which is a bit more friendly. Guy who goes by the name Phantom1980 did not agree with my assessment that, on average, boxers make a lot more than UFC fighters, which is why you always see the UFC guys crying about it. To that he said, "Respectfully, I disagree with the point on MMA. I'm a fan of both sports, and I truly believe that Sean O'Malley is a bigger name than Conor Benn."
Then why is Sean O'Malley the one crying?
But even if he wasn't there, definitely UFC fighters who are, and they were, not getting paid the same as boxers, and it's not due to the revenue being brought in, it's due to the UFC being a monopoly. We know from the lawsuit that UFC fighters only get paid 16% of the total revenue. We had fighters like John Jones, Silva, Masvidal, and Conor doing pay-per-view buys at 1 million buys or close to it while not making $10 million.
Tell me, when's the last time a UFC pay-per-view brought in $1 million? Did any of Sean's?
It's the same reason why past fighters in boxing closer to the inception of the sport who were more popular than current fighters made less, even when calculated for inflation, to newer fighters who are nowhere near as popular. Because there was no completion and no protection for the fighters. I would also look and see how many UFC pay-per-views have done 1 million buys or more in the last 10 years compared to boxing. Not saying that boxing is an inferior sport, love them both, but I think the UFC is more popular, due to the best in each division usually being forced to fight.
Oh, like when John Jones fought Francis Ngannou, right? Wait a minute.
Also, them being on one network compared to boxing being on several is also just due to the more split nature of boxing. I think that's a strength to MMA, not a ding. I don't see any single boxing promotion getting a $7 billion deal.
You know what I don't see? I don't see Turki El Sheikh making the investment in MMA that he's making in boxing.
Top Rank is one of the best promotions, and stables can't even get an annual $100 million deal. I don't hope things change in MMA, though, to be like the NBA, where fighters are paid a fair share of the revenue but aren't in charge of the sport. I would hope the same for boxing as well. And you know, I was all ready to type a lengthy response to what was this lengthy comment, but Florida Man already did it for me. Florida Man 8558 compared the highest UFC attendance record in history, Whitaker versus Adesanya, 57,000, to Conor Benn's last two fights, which aren't even the biggest attendance records in boxing, 65,000 and 60,000.
Both bigger than the biggest attendance records for the UFC.
And remember that Phantom said he believes that Sean O'Malley is a bigger star than Conor Benn. Well, his numbers don't tell that story.
The most people that ever attended a Sean O'Malley fight were around 19,000 compared to the 65,000 for Conor Benn's biggest fight. And bear in mind, Conor Benn isn't even the biggest name in boxing. This is a guy who never won a title. Florida Man finished it off by saying Conor Benn is a bum prospect, trading on his father's last name. Yet he eclipses every fighter in UFC history in terms of ticket sales. And in the end, that's what it's all about. It's not personal, it's business.
It's a numbers game is what it is. And the numbers tell the story. Boxing is bigger than mixed martial arts. I don't know why you would think differently. What fight can Sean O'Malley even have in the UFC that would fill out a football stadium? Because Conor Benn did that with Chris Eubank, neither of which are champion-level boxers. But they were able to do that. Show me the UFC fight that does that.
You can't, because it never happened, because MMA is not bigger than boxing. It's not even close. Boxing!
Boxing clears. Boxing is the bigger sport.
Boxing!
There really are easier ways to gauge which sport is bigger than sifting through all those different numbers. Netflix is the biggest platform out there, arguably. And how many boxing matches have they already done?
Boxing!
And how many more do they have on schedule? How many more do they plan on doing versus how many MMA fights they've done and how many more they plan on doing? It's very obvious that if mixed martial arts were the more popular sport, the bigger one, they'd be making an investment in that. Near as I can tell, what they're more interested in is boxing.
Boxing!
Said it before and I'll say it again. The Furtada brothers and Dana White cornered the market on fighters who can't really make it as boxers but want to fight for a living. So they created an avenue for them to do that. But if those guys could box, they would box. Because boxers make more and boxing is more popular.
Globally.
It's available on more platforms, in more countries. than mixed martial arts. When the mixed martial artists want to make real money, what do they come to?
Boxing!
There's no quantifiable metric to qualify that mixed martial arts is somehow bigger or more popular than boxing, or that Sean O'Malley is more popular than Conor Benn.
Zero!
Even if Conor Benn's marquee value is limited to the United Kingdom, more Brits are paying to see Conor Benn than anybody's paying to see Sean O'Malley, and this is a numbers game.
That is, more Brits have already paid to see Conor Benn than anybody's paid to see Sean O'Malley, because we're talking about events that have long since passed. We're not talking hypotheticals. We're not postulating. These are facts.
No reason to believe Sean is more popular than Conor. I'd wager you just like him better, and that's fine for you. Elsewhere in the world of boxing, boxing scribe Max Kellerman advises Eddie Hearn to mind his business. After watching Dana White and Zuffa Boxing take verbal blows from promoter Eddie Hearn, Max Kellerman decided to enter the ring and fight back. Kellerman joined the broadcast team for Zuffa last year, a joint boxing promotion venture launched by TKO, the parent company of UFC, WWE, and as a longtime boxing promoter, Hearn has attempted to downplay the emergence of White's Zuffa Boxing, but after losing fighter Conor Benn to Zuffa, Kellerman believes it's time for Hearn, Oscar De La Hoya, and other leading boxing promoters to recognize the startup's impact.
Bear in mind that Max Kellerman is a company man, so if he's speaking on behalf of Zuffa, it's because he works for them.
They have been going at Zuffa and mentioning me by name, Kellerman said of Hearn and De La Hoya on his Game Over podcast with co-host Rich Paul. They have been going after Zuffa and talking wild about me.
Well, they have, but it's because you've made it very obvious you're a company show.
Kellerman noted Hearn was recently talking wild, but then appeared to be choking back tears after losing Benn to Zuffa. You can't talk wild on Monday and be crying on Tuesday, Kellerman continued. You can't be talking about how on Monday these guys suck and they're nothing, and I'm so much better, and on Tuesday, crying about a loss. Throughout the broadcast history, or even media history, whenever there has been an expansion, boxing has expanded with it.
Okay, Max makes a decent point there.
Kellerman cited boxing's benefit from the printing press, radio, TV, and cable, and now he believes it's happening again with streaming. Boxing has historically been a good test case for new broadcast ventures because it delivers a reliable audience while being cheaper to produce than other sports. And while Kellerman believes Zuffa Boxing will be better for the fans and fighters in terms of visibility and expansion, promoters such as Hearn and De La Hoya are trying to maintain the status quo. But the status quo is not good for boxing or boxing fans, Kellerman continued, noting that boxing was completely off broadcast television in the United States before Zuffa. Here's the new game, Kellerman said of Zuffa Boxing, and guys like Eddie Hearn or Oscar who are flailing and insulting Dana White and Nick Khan, I don't know why you'd pick those two guys to have a fight with. And me either. You really don't want it. What they haven't understood is, the game is already over. They just don't know it. Game over. And my best advice to them would be, don't talk wild on a Monday and literally cry on a Tuesday when you take a loss. What you should be doing is literally minding your own business.
You still have it!
Hearn would probably argue that Benn was his business. Zuffa Boxing might see this as an opportunity to expand the sport, but it's not without controversy. As Kellerman portrays Zuffa as an innovative avenue to grow boxing, he's glossing over the fact that it's financed by Saudi royal Turkey El Al Sheikh and Sella Sport, which is owned by Saudi Arabia's public investment fund. And since joining Zuffa, Kellerman has been accused of being a shill for the Saudi-backed company after previously being known for his honest and unbiased commentary on the sport.
In truth, Max isn't doing anything at Zuffa that Devsani isn't doing at Queensbury, that Chris Mannix isn't doing at The Zone.
Despite the controversy surrounding Zuffa, the boxing promotion venture appears hell-bent on proving this is the new game, and signing Benn was undoubtedly a big win for their efforts and a devastating blow for the promoter game. Now at the moment, Matchroom shouldn't be trying to keep up with Zuffa Boxing because at this early stage, they're all about statements and big gestures, not dissimilar from what you saw from the PBC upon their inception or DAZN.
Spending all that money?
When they first debuted in the United States, that's more or less what Zuffa is doing now. paying to play, but when the situation stabilizes...
How can Matchroom compete?
Well, Zuffa recently unveiled their stable of fighters so far, a long list of names, many of which even hardcore boxing fans are going to be unfamiliar with, save a familiar few.
Think about that.
Now think about this. The recent string of fights that Matchroom has announced, including this weekend's unification match between Navarrete and Nunez, Callum Smith versus David Morrell, Ammo Williams versus Carlos Adames.
Those are all great fights, by the way. None of which required any Saudi backing, any Saudi involvement. Matchroom was able to make those fights all on their own, as part of their regular schedule. They're not behind a paywall.
All those fighters are more familiar to the boxing community at large than the vast majority of Zuffa boxers, and that is how Matchroom and the other game in town can compete.
Top rank when they get back on their feet, Golden Boy.
These individual promotional outfits need to form stronger bonds to make fights amongst themselves as an affront to Zuffa, and they still have time. In the last 10 years of boxing, the rise of exclusivity deals between promoters and their broadcast partners has led to complacency.
They got too lax.
The matchmaking was not as ambitious as it could have been to keep the audience interested. With so many promoters having exclusive deals, they just made what fights they could make on their own. Some were more willing to do cross-promotional fights than others, but the sport was largely divided for the last 10 years of boxing. It can no longer afford to be that way now that Zuffa's here throwing around all this money and signing all these big names.
So if the question is, how can Matchroom or anyone hope to compete with Zuffa Boxing given the depth of their war chest? That's how.
Can't beat them now. You beat them in the long run, in the long term. You outlast them, like you outlasted the PBC.
Outlasted Showtime? You outlast Zuffa. That doesn't even mean you'll win.
But you won't lose. Not so long as you're in the fight, and that will keep you in the fight. The recent string of cards that Matchroom has announced is better than anything Zuffa has put together so far, and anything they can put together with their existing stable.
And that's coming from a guy who actually likes Zuffa. I've liked every Zuffa card I've seen so far, but they don't have fights yet like Callum Smith versus David Morrell, or Emmanuel Navarrete versus Sugar Nunez.
Not yet. And because Zuffa is so focused on legitimizing what's supposed to be their Zuffa belt for a more traditional boxing fan, Matchroom and the other promoters can meet that market, can meet that need. Max Kellerman warns that the game is already over. They just don't know it yet. Don't expect the other game in town to take it from him. I expect them to put up a fight, and given how fast Zuffa is growing, they better.
Because they're in for a fight.
In men's middleweight news, how the WBO's shock meldonium ruling allowed Janibek Alimkhanuly to keep his title. The WBO has confirmed that middleweight champion Janibek Alimkhanuly tested positive for the prohibited substance meldonium and has issued a 1-year suspension without stripping him of the title. Meldonium, also marketed as Mildronate, is a cardiovascular medication developed in Latvia and commonly prescribed in parts of Eastern Europe to treat heart-related conditions by improving circulation and oxygen efficiency. The substance was added to the WADA banned list in 2016 after evidence showed it could enhance endurance, recovery, and oxygen utilization in athletes. The World Championships Committee resolution states that the adverse analytical finding was confirmed by both the A and B samples under WADA protocol. Thus, the suspension is retroactive to December 2nd, 2025, the date of the official notification of the adverse finding. The ruling sets out a clear timeline. An A sample collected on November 15th, 2025, produced an adverse analytical finding for meldonium. A B sample was then opened on January 8th of this year at a WADA-accredited lab, with confirmation received the following day that it also tested positive, matching the initial result.
Well, that's a slam dunk, ain't it?
The committee cites its authority under WBO regulations to impose discipline where a participant tests positive for an illegal or performance-enhancing drug, with the adverse findings supported by WADA and confirmed by WADA-accredited laboratory documentation. The resolution also relies on strict liability, making it clear that intent or fault is not required once a prohibited substance is confirmed in the athlete's system.
It's just a long-winded way of saying saying it's your fault irrespective of how it got there.
After reviewing the procedural history, including show cause notices and written submissions from Team Alimkhanuly, the committee ordered a 1-year suspension, retroactive to December 2nd of last year, as conditions tied to reinstatement and continued recognition as champion. Alimkhanuly must undergo comprehensive, year-round random testing through a WADA-certified anti-doping program, which results certified and reported directly to the WBO. He must also complete a mandatory anti-doping education program. The ruling states that all costs associated with testing and education are to be paid by the fighter. Crucially, the resolution acknowledges that vacating the WBO middleweight title was under consideration. The committee chose to suspend instead, leaving Alimkhanuly recognized as champion during the ban.
But why? Why not just strip him?
To keep the division moving, the WBO authorized an interim middleweight title fight between its two top-rated contenders. The resolution states that upon the suspension's expiration, Alimkhanuly must face the interim champion immediately to end the interim status. No intervening bouts are permitted. The WBO also notes its process operates independently of any separate governmental or federation proceedings tied to the same matter. This is where the WBO is going to take heat. Alimkhanuly previously denied any wrongdoing when news of the adverse finding first surfaced. I will always support clean sport. Y'all better know this. You also know that I promote clean sport. I am surprised to read the news. VADA was analyzed for the first time and said that everything was clear. I haven't made any changes to my vitamins or diet. I don't understand why this happened on the second test. We requested reconsideration. We are waiting for answers.
Yeah, everybody reacts the same way in this situation.
To make a long story short, why specifically the WBO chose not to strip this guy when the B sample confirmed what's in the A sample? Your guess is as good as mine, because they have every right to do so, to strip him.
Instead, he's gonna sit out what remains of this year until December when the suspension expires. I don't know what the IBF's gonna do, but they haven't stripped him yet.
And that's surprising, because they're usually pretty Johnny on the spot when it comes to vacating one of their titles. They don't make special exceptions for big names or marquee fighters, so why Janibek? Why Janibek is being allowed to keep the red and gold title after all this time? Your guess is as good as mine. Is there something specific, something particular about his case that has allowed this to go on this long?
If there is, they haven't said it.
And when this year is done and the suspension is lifted, will Janibek Alimkhanuly even still be able to make 160? Are the sanctioning bodies, given the frequency of situations just like this one, becoming more laxed when it comes to failed VADA tests?
Easing up?
They must be, because they haven't stripped this guy, and they have every right to do so. It doesn't make a lot of sense, but that's the story. At least with the WBO, they're not gonna strip him.
Now we gotta see what the IBF decides to do.